the way we teach business is unique because we teach like how to be successful in business, but we teach it from a biblical perspective, which is really, I was going to say fairly unique, but it's actually really unique. And we've helped a lot of people make a lot of money and change their lives.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Everything is Influence podcast, where we go over the 4 levels of influence. Every single week, we're diving into the skills, the strategies, the mindset to help you become a person of influence, to rise above the influence, not just to be affected or infected. And we always go through the 4 levels of influence, how you ultimately use the skills to influence yourself, take what's inside of you, transfer that to another human being in a positive way, share the influence one to many, and then at the highest level of influence, legendary, so you can influence when you're not even there. And that doesn't mean that you die. That just means that your presence has been felt so deeply. And today I have a really amazing privilege to be able to share with you the tools and strategies and insights from one of my personal mentors. And if you've been here listening, you know that I'm pretty good at the sales thing. I've been around this guy for a couple of years now, and about a year ago, I saw him do something so magical in a stage. I was like, I need to give this man money, because there was clearly something there that was so beyond my own skill set, which I've honed in pretty well. I saw magic happen, and it wasn't just a fluke. I've been seeing him do that weekly, daily, since I've been a part of his program. I joined his highest level program, and today we're going to extract some of those insights to really help you become a person of influence. And so this gentleman's name, without any further ado, is Myron Golden. How are you, sir?
I am utterly fantastic, Eli. How are you, bro?
I'm amazing. And so I know right now you actually have a challenge that you're doing. And, you know, I saw this, and, you know, you do these every month, these challenge models. I know you were on the road doing events. You're speaking for a long time. And so I kind of want to start with, just to give context for everybody that's listening, what are you up to in the world right now? Like, what do you do? Like, what's your whole jam? And then we're going to kind of reverse engineer from, you know, level 4 down to level 1, and reverse engineer how you got to be this person of influence and have the impact that you do. So what are you up to in the world today?
So, yeah, like you said, I do a challenge. So we have a family business. My son works beside me in my business. My daughter works beside me, my son-in-law, my brothers. And so we have a family business. And when I say a family business, though I started it, everybody who works in it is integral to the business. So everybody has an important role to play. And what we do is we teach business owners how to grow their businesses. And I'm the primary lead coach, if you will, consultant, if you will. And I've created a couple of coaching programs where we teach business owners how to scale their business by teaching them basically 4 moves. And all of the way we teach business is unique because we teach like how to be successful in business, but we teach it from a biblical perspective, which is really, I was going to say fairly unique, but it's actually really unique. And we've helped a lot of people make a lot of money and change their lives. So that's what we do pretty much. I've written some books, and we do a challenge, like you said, every month. And we've got a couple of coaching programs, and we do a lot of podcast interviews like we're doing right now. So yeah, that's what we do.
I know specifically your process has allowed me to charge a lot more money in a really ethical way, what benefits everybody. Sure. And I know you do this for everybody. So you've got this family business, you're teaching sales, influence, how to make more offers. Kind of unpack for me, because people think, sales or influence, there's some often negative context around it. You have zero limiting beliefs about what happens there as far as selling, serving, and empowering, and you're unapologetic in a way that's so authentic and real. It shifts people just based on how you show up. Was that always that way for you, or what?
No, I don't think so. I think it's something that I developed through thousands and thousands of sales conversations. And so like when I think about selling, the first thing I think when I think about selling and salespeople is most salespeople don't feel good about sales, which is fascinating to me, because without salespeople, there is no economy, right? Like only reason any of us ever have any money in our pockets or in our bank accounts to do the things we desire to do for the people we care about, the people we love, or the causes we care about is because somebody somewhere sold something to someone for a profit. And so that's why an economy exists. The reason most people, including salespeople, feel negatively about sales is because number one, they don't know what sales is. And number two, the only sales experiences most people remember are the bad ones. And so when I say that, people say, well, what do you mean the only sales experience people remember are the bad ones? When somebody is really, really good at sales and you buy something, you don't feel like they sold you. You think you bought it because it was your idea. But the reality is none of us were born with a desire to buy anything. So anytime we've bought anything, we bought it because somebody did a good job selling it to us. Now, here's the question. Did they sell it to us seamlessly, or did they sell it to us like some other way? When I say seamlessly, did they sell it to us in a way where they made us feel like it was our idea? So that's the difference. And so when I say the only sales experience people remember are the bad ones, we remember when somebody talked to us about a product or a service that we had no desire for, and then they tried to pressure us or convince us to buy it, right? So that's what I mean. So people who attempt to convince people or pressure people into buying something, they do that because they're not good at sales. Sales is not convincing. Sales is persuasion. What's the difference? Convincing is when I attempt to get you to do something I desire you to do for my reasons. Selling is when I help you make a decision you already desire to make for your own reasons. And it doesn't matter, Eli. Anybody listening to me right now, they already have a when I get paid, I want to buy list, right? So think about that. We all have stuff we'd like to buy when the time is right and the money's right. So when the time is right and the money's right, I'm going to buy XYZ, right? That's what, so when people say, Myron, how do I find people to sell my stuff to? I always tell them you're asking the wrong question. And if you ask the wrong question, you're not going to find the right answer. So a better question than how do I find people to sell my stuff to is how do I make myself findable for people who already desire to buy what I already desire to sell? What does that mean? They're like, regardless of who you are, what you sell, if you have something good that's going to change somebody's life for the better, there are already millions of people in the world who would love to buy what you are selling at the price you charge for it if they only knew you existed. So instead of trying to find people to sell your stuff to, make yourself more findable for people who already desire to buy what you already desire to sell, and then selling becomes seamless. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know because I'm in your program, it wasn't always that way. You said you weren't so great in your words.
I was terrible. I was terrible. When I got started in sales, bro, I was so bad. Like I started selling insurance and investments. When I started selling, I got started in the company October of 1985. I did not make my first sale until April of 1987. 18 months after I got started, I made my first sale. And that wasn't because I wasn't doing presentations. I was doing presentations, but what I was doing, I was trying to convince people who did not desire to buy what I desired to sell to buy my thing so I could make a commission. When I realized, wait a minute, there are millions of people that already want this stuff. All I got to do is go out there and position myself in places where people who desire to buy can find me. And now, like selling is like the easiest thing in the world.
I think a lot of us here that saw you for the first time, kind of your big explosion onto the map was when you did the repitch for Russell Brunson. Everybody was talking about Myron Golden. And there you did like this eagle story. You did a lot of these stories with metaphors, these beliefs, that the picture, parable, principle, all this stuff. Like, how did you come up with that? I mean, that's obviously you've had that wasn't your first time doing it. How did you come up with all of that? And because people here that are wanting to be more influential, they're like, what do I say? And sometimes we ask questions, and a lot of sales is that, or we do a presentation, but you were teaching principles and values through story. Like how did, and the story is genius for anybody. I mean, I'm just mind blown when I'm seeing this stuff. How did you come up with that?
So it's really interesting. So I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I think a lot. Like Napoleon Hill was not wrong when he titled his book, Think and Grow Rich. I like to tell people thinking is the hardest work most people never do, right? Right? People will maintain a state of physical diligence so they can maintain a state of mental laziness, right? So people work harder in their body so they don't have to think. about what would work better if they only tried it. So where do I get stories from? I get them from just paying attention. And like, if you read enough content from different arenas, things that are seemingly unrelated will remind you of things that they're totally unrelated to. And you start putting stuff together, and then you start seeing how things from different arenas actually come together and work the same way. That's where innovation comes from. It's like Steve Jobs took a calligraphy course, and when he started working on computers, he said, these fonts are ugly. What if we figured out how to put calligraphy into a computer, right? Well, calligraphy into a computer, wait, what? Right? And so that's where, like, I believe our minds begin to light up with ideas when we start seeing connections between seemingly unrelated things. So a lot of people know about Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right?
Yep.
Okay. So he also has a book that most people have never heard of called If You Want to Be Rich and Happy. Are you familiar with this book?
No, I'm not.
If you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school. Okay. So in that book, he gave an illustration about birds learn to fly by going down before they go up. And every time I haven't even read the book. I was just thumbing through it one day. I saw that illustration and I thought, that's a really interesting analogy, and just thought about it for months, maybe even years, before I ever decided, oh, but you know what? Everything goes down before it goes up. And then just thinking about that, in order for a building to go up, you got to dig a hole in the ground, pour a foundation. In order for a plane to go up, the wings have to be angled down. So in nature, before anything can go up, it has to go down. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, the tree that the bird is in has to go down. It starts out as a seed, it has to go down in the ground. And then I just started thinking about ways to play with all of these ideas about things going down before they could go up. And then I started telling the story. And like, a lot of people don't know. A lot of people say, well, I don't like telling stories because I'm not good at it, or I don't like selling because I'm not good at it. But what happens is when you tell a story over and over, every time you tell it, you get better at telling it, right? And then you think of things, oh, if I would have said this right there, that would have been really cool. And so that's how I come up with stories, just by, and like I've never heard anybody tell like that, the story, the eagle story, as people call it. I call it the law of advancement. I've never heard anybody talk about that before, but I got the genesis of that idea from Robert Kiyosaki's book, If You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School.
Amazing.
And it just spawned all these different thoughts.
Yeah, I read a lot myself, and I meet a lot of successful people. And one of the books I've heard the most that's helped people, obviously the Bible, but also the Tao Te Ching, because it's just these short, understandings of principles in nature and life that relate to kind of how we navigate our own lives, that give people insight and new perspective as to, challenges they might be dealing with. And so And
what's that book called again, you said?
The Tao Te Ching.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, the Tao Te Ching, it's maybe 5,000, 6,000 years old. It's like, wow. It's like these short, when I see you next time, I'll bring you a copy. It's like, it's amazing. It's one of these old Chinese, I was about to say, it sounds Chinese, Tao Te Ching. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like 80 plus, just these short, almost poems. Wayne Dyer did a book on the wisdom. It's called The Wisdom of the Tao. And so there's even like Taoist, there's like Taoist priests and things like that.
I've heard that phrase, Taoism and stuff. I've heard that. Yeah.
All based on that book. It's kind of like I don't want to say like a Bible for Asian, but that would be wrong.
Like a reference guide for
it's,
people who want to be like center their focus or whatever.
And I know that you've got since we're on that track, the Bible has been such a strong foundation for what you do. Was it always that way? Were your parents sending you to Sunday school? No, you just got into it.
Well, my parents. But the first book, other than a karate book or a comic book, that I ever read in my life. And I had a unique experience when I was 16 years old. And I had what is known by those of us who are of that way, an encounter with Jesus Christ, like a spiritual encounter with Jesus Christ himself, and just realized that, this life is temporal, but life is eternal. And so anyway.
What was that experience?
So I was in high school. Yep. Talk about influence, right? I'm in high school. And there's this other kid in high school, Pete Smith. And Pete was into karate. I was into karate. So I'd go to his house and practice karate. Well, there's another kid in our school named Stan Harris, and he had this jacket. And on the front, it said Stan, and on the other side, it said Harris. And in the back, in big, bold, black letters, it said, "Without Jesus, you ain't living." I'm like, what does that mean? Right? And so anyway, so Stan and Pete lived on the same street. I was over at Pete's house practicing karate one day. Stan came over and practiced with us. He was a martial artist. So we were all martial artists. We'd go into Pete's basement. We'd practice karate. Yeah. And I got ready to leave one day, and Stan says to me, "So let me ask you a question." "Sure. What's that?" "If you died today, do you know for sure you'd go to heaven?" So, "No, I'm pretty sure if I died today, I wouldn't." Right. Wow. And he said, "Can I show you some verses from the Bible?" I said, "Sure, do what you got to do." And he did. And I was like, "Yeah, that's really interesting." And from that moment on, I became really, really aware of my mortality. As a 16-year-old, I'm like really hyper aware of my mortality. And I started going to church with him. And one day I just said, you know what, they taught that, religion is not what fixes your relationship with God. God sent his son to die on a cross. And if you trust in what he did and stop trying to be good, then let him be good for you, then you can be adopted into his family. I'm like, I'll do that. And so then after that, he said, now you need to start reading the Bible. Now, if they would have told me that first, I probably wouldn't have done it, because I just didn't like to read, because I wasn't a good reader, right? But I started reading the Bible. And what happened for me when I was 16 years old, I started reading the Bible, and I'd never read it before, even though I'd been going to church my whole life. And I didn't realize, I thought the Bible I was going to find all this religious stuff in the Bible. And I started finding all these principles that would make my life better. Like, for instance, specifically, one that changed my life, because I have 6 brothers and we did not always get along. I read a verse in Proverbs chapter 15, verse number 1. It says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." I thought, my brothers and I get in arguments a lot. I'm going to try this soft answer thing. And one day my brother Mike, he came in and he was like screaming. So, wow, that's really interesting. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. Is there something I can help you to do to fix that? And on the outside, we started talking about how to solve it. But on the inside, I was like, so cool. And so I became so intrigued to see what else I could find in the Bible that would help me make my life better. And I started finding all of these principles and applying them in any area of my life I applied the Bible to. That area of my life got better. And I just kept doing that. And then when I got started in business and I discovered the Bible said things about business, I said, well, what if I do this the way the Bible teaches? And the same thing happened. So that's pretty much how that deal went down. And I've been studying the Bible ever since.
Soft answers. And it's interesting how you've made this correlation. So, not all people for sure that study the Bible, that are Christian and all of that. I have some other friends, Pedro Addo, Christian, he, does all the 5-day challenge stuff. A lot of people that go to church a lot, they limit themselves financially. They have limiting beliefs about making money or charging money. It's rare that you see somebody, a person of such strong Christian faith, but also a strong business sense. It's not, it's not completely uncommon, but the way that you have linked it as virtuous to charge money and virtuous to build a business, and the analogies and metaphors from the Bible that you've shared have really helped me. How did that come to be? Is that your own insight?
Well, because I study history. So that's part of no, it's not, it wasn't an original insight with me. Like, I could see clearly that, after I came to Christ when I was 16, I'd go to church, I'd hear the pastor speak out about the dangers of making too much money. And I thought to myself, well, you make way more money than we make. Like, you live in a nicer house than we live in. You live in a nicer car, drive a nicer car than we drive. You make more money than my dad makes. My dad has 7 kids. You have 2 kids. And so I was confused as to okay, so what determines a lot of money? Because to me, back then in 1979 or whatever it was, my pastor was, compared to us, rich, right? And so it didn't make sense to me. I could see clearly an incongruency. And so, and it didn't irritate me. It just fascinated me, right? And then I was poor for a long time. I was broke, like bad broke. Even after I first got married, when my wife was 8 months pregnant with our own child, our first child, we were so broke, our electricity and water were both disconnected at the same time. So I know what it's like not to have money. And then I started seeing these verses in the Bible. I was like, okay, well, if money's so terrible, what does it mean when it says the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich and he addeth no sorrow with it? Like, what does that mean? Like the first time the word rich is used in the Bible, it's talking about Abraham. And it says he was very rich. He wasn't just rich, he was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And Abraham was rich, and Isaac was rich, and Jacob was rich, and David was rich, and Solomon was rich, and Job was rich, and all these Bible characters. Like, why, how is this so terrible? The idea that anybody is supposed to live in lack as a virtue is not a biblical concept. It is a satanic concept. Okay, now, that idea was promoted heavily through Greek mythology. The less money you have, the more virtuous you are. Through Roman mythology that came down through the Roman Catholic Church, and then when the Protestants, Protestant means Protestant, the Martin Luther, John Calvin, those guys that protested the Catholic Church, when they came out of Catholicism, they said the reason we're coming out of Catholicism is because Catholics say you got to do this, we got to do this good deed, this good deed, this good deed, this good deed, and maybe you can get into heaven. He said, but the scripture says it's by grace through faith, and it doesn't have anything to do with the work you do. It has something to do with the work Christ did. But they came out, they got salvation right, but they had a whole lot of other doctrine around money, for one, and many other things that was still twisted. It wasn't accurate. What you'll have a hard time finding, if you look at the entire Old Testament, 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 books in the New Testament, 66 books in all, you will be hard pressed to find Jewish people that believe that poverty is virtue. Wow. That is a new concept that came into play that was promoted heavily by the Roman Catholic Church and then by the Protestant Church, and then in the United States of America by slave owners. And what they would do is they would teach their slaves that you work really hard for me down here on earth, and then you'll get all your reward after a while in heaven. And then you had slave preachers and former slave preachers who, when they came out of slavery, they still preached that doctrine, and they would have a lot of black folks and white folks go to the church. And so if you look at the effect of Catholicism and the effect of slavery on the minds of people with regard to money and the Bible, poverty it's really from a physical realm, that's how it happened. But on a spiritual realm, Satan is the God little g of lack. And so he knows if a person is a believer, a follower of Christ, he can't keep that person's blessing from them. So what he does is he makes them think their blessing is bad, so he keeps them from it because he can't keep it from them.
Amazing. It's the two of the tenets I always go back, and you've seen some of my sales training that we did. I talk about we have to be able to transfer from ourselves to another human being in order to influence them. Clarity and certainty are two of the core emotions.
Sure. Your
clarity and certainty as it relates to these concepts of, things that are complex and how they actually affect people on this humanitarian worldview, spiritual, other than me level is just always profound. I can listen to you all day.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was listening to your content last night, so I'm a fan. When you were doing these presentations initially, and you were reading the Bible and not doing well, you started to figure some things out. Like that journey for a lot of people here that might be struggling in sales or doing presentations, piecing things together. And a lot of times, even for myself, when I started doing presentations, I just had a script, and most people have a script. And they're told to master the script, not deviate off the script. You've definitely deviated from script. You've been thinking about these concepts. At what point? Because were you with like Prime America or something like a network marketing company initially?
Yeah, I was with Prime America before they became Prime America, when they were A.L. Williams.
Yeah.
So, and yes, I was terrible at sales, but here's what most people don't realize. And this goes back to another biblical principle. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's interesting. A double-minded man. So if inside you believe there's something wrong with making money, but outside you're attempting to make money, you are incongruent, you're double-minded. You're attempting to go in two directions at the same time that are opposing each other, right? And so until I got my perspective on sales right internally, anything that I did in sales externally could not be good. Because, like you said, clarity and certainty, sales is a transfer of certainty. Certainty about what? Certainty about an outcome. And if you're good at sales, you can, either the person you're selling to is certain that you are wrong and they are right. Either they're more certain that you are wrong and they are right, or you're more certain that they are wrong and you are right. Whoever has the highest level of certainty, provided that the outcome is something that the prospect wants, whoever has the highest level of certainty is going to be the one that influences the other one.
What do you think takes away somebody's certainty?
I was hoping you were going to ask that question. So I think that certainty, certainty, I'm going to use the word confidence, because certainty, why would a person be certain? They'd have certainty because they have confidence. So if you think about the root word of confidence is confide, which means to trust. So a person that has certainty, they are either trusting in their own ability, themselves, they're trusting in principles, or they're trusting in an expected outcome. They're like, I trust this, right? Their expectation for a favorable outcome is extremely large. So where does that confidence come from? First and foremost, confidence comes from competence. The better you are at doing something, the more confident you are you can do it. Right? Yeah. If I said, hey, can you walk across the floor? You'd be, oh yeah, sure, I can walk across the floor. Why? You know you can do it. You have competence. But if the same number of steps on a tightrope across two tall buildings, you're not as certain. Why? You've never done that before. But you've walked before, but you've never walked across that before, right? And so, like, the same exercise in a different circumstance, a different situation, now you don't have certainty. Why? Because you don't have competence. So first it comes from competence. The next place it comes from character. What do I mean character? You are a person of your word. Most people have broken their word to themselves so many times in the past, they can't believe a word they say. So they say they're going to do something. They know they always let themselves off the hook, so they don't believe it. So they don't have confidence because they don't have character, right? So confidence comes from competence, it comes from character, and it comes from clarity. I love what Rick Warren said in his book, The Purpose-Driven Life. Nothing becomes dynamic until it becomes clear. So, like, I can clearly see the outcomes of the things that I do before I'm done doing them. And when I say clearly see them, I see them in my mind. Say that again.
You visualize.
Yes, I see them clearly in my mind. Like, I don't ask myself questions. Like, if I'm working on a project, I don't ask myself, what if this doesn't work? That's a disempowering question. Now I'm entertaining as a possibility something that I'm working on not working. Now, I've got another frame. Everything I work on works. Sometimes it works for me. The other times it works on me. If it's not working for me, then it's working on me, and it will work on me until I become a person for whom it can work. So either way, it's all good, right? And so I don't have this, oh, I'm going to be a failure. What if I do this and it doesn't work for me, I'm a failure. No, if I do it and it doesn't work for me, it's working on me, and I'm still not a failure. Right? So that's where the third piece comes in. You have clarity. You understand how it works. See, most people don't understand how life works. So they go through every aspect of their life, guessing and hoping and wishing, guessing and hoping and wishing, guessing and hoping and wishing. But when you study principles and you know how, like I'm not surprised if I drop my phone and it falls to the ground. Why? Because that's just a principle. Well, there are principles that affect sales just like, and influence, just like there are principles that the principle of gravity affects anything that you drop off of a table or out of your hand. And it's so interesting. You can build influence in somebody in whom you have no influence. And it's really interesting if you understand that you can build influence. Like, let's say I've got something that can change your life, right? Then I believe that I have a moral obligation to do everything in my power to get you to buy that from me. If I've got a solution that I sell that can change your life for the better, I've got a moral obligation to do everything in my power to get you to buy that. So how do I do that? And I'm not even going to convince you. I'm just going to persuade you. because I already know if I go to an event, let's say I go to an event and the name of the event is social media marketing profits. I don't have to wonder why you're there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You are there because you want to use social media to make profits in your marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I can present to you a solution that helps you achieve that outcome, then as long as you have the ability and you believe, as long as you have the ability to do it, my job is to persuade you that this solution that I've created is your best chance at getting the outcome you desire. If I do that, it's almost impossible for you not to buy. The only thing that will keep you from buying is if you have bought into the idea that I can't afford it is a real concept. And there's no such thing as I can't afford it, right? And when I say there's no such thing as can't afford it, yes, there's such a thing as somebody might not have the money for it right now, but that's irrelevant. Have you ever bought something that you didn't have the money for? Well, you figured it out. What did you do? You figured it out, right? And so when somebody says I can't afford it, what they really mean is, well, this is not important enough yet to me to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way,
I think one of the best things, like as a coach, and I think as a sales consultant, it's kind of a coaching energy, which doesn't mean that they're dependent on you. You're empowering people. And one of the worst things we can do as a parent and influencer of any type is not to have belief in people. Like, hey, I believe you can do this.
Absolutely.
And one of the things we used to always say about the process, I was selling is this works 100% of the time for 100% of the people who do this 100%. And so it's a 300% guarantee. We just need 100% from you. It's like so the questions about you are you willing to do what it takes? Do you have this belief in yourself? And a lot of people don't. And I love this whole concept. And when I saw you at the roofer conference, you came out and you're like, everything's energy. And, I think sometimes that when people have that low energy, that low certainty, that low belief, I'm like, hey, how's it going? They're kind of, well, I'm okay. I'm like, come on, man, let's go. And I'll give them some energy. And that there's that magnetic kind of effect that we get to have as influencers. And it's so beautiful to see you do that. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think as a coach, as part of your responsibility as a coach, as a parent, as a teacher, as a guide, as a leader, part of your responsibility is to believe in the people you lead or teach so much that they can borrow some of your belief in them until they build belief in themselves. Mm-hmm. Like you might, not you, Eli, but if you're a coaching client of mine, you might doubt whether or not you can do it. I will never doubt whether you can do it. I already know you can do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you'll like, I have people say this. Well, what Myron did was he just made me believe. He believed in me so much. Eventually I started believing in myself. Exactly. Mm-hmm. I've said before, I believe the only thing that's impossible for me is that something would be impossible for me.
So powerful. Two of the biggest distinctions I got from, watching you and learning, I want to share with everybody is, one of the things you said, it's like, if you make $1 million, are you rich? Well, it depends. It takes you 40 years, 25K a year. No. So you're already making enough money. You're just not doing it fast enough. And that is just so true. What people are doing. And I think a lot of people, time is infinite. It's like we are all going to die very
expiring every day.
Every day. Exactly. And we don't know. And so a lot of people just have this illusion, as the Buddha says, the trick is you think you have time. Like you don't have time and you don't know. One of the things that I started to really help me in my sales was I visualized I wanted people to quote unquote take action, and I would try to get them to take action, but it was convincing. And so I really kind of reverse engineered that. It's not as advanced as you have, but I said, well, what precedes all action? Well, there's decisions and there's thoughts and feelings. And so if I can get them in the right feeling and the right thought, and, I watched your challenge, and for everybody listening to this, I highly recommend you watch Myron's challenge. He does them every month. I don't know what day it was, but you did this picture where you draw a picture, you tell a story, this principle, and then the parable, and then the principle. And you did, it's the stick figure with the facts and the focus and the belief.
I did it yesterday.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's like the thought in your head, like it's basically letting me know I can't think the thought, what if this doesn't work out? And as
Nope.
before somebody sees your offer, you don't, it's like the exact thought. I was like, man, I saw my mind going that way, and then it just couldn't go that way anymore to what if this doesn't work out? Because I was so I was thinking this is going to work out. And that's exactly what you want people thinking before they see it.
And if you want to ask it as a question, you say, how awesome is it going to be when this works?
Mm-hmm.
How much better is my life going to be when this works? How great is it going to be when this works? Right? Instead of saying, what if this doesn't work? Well, if you ask a disempowering question, you can't get an empowered answer. Right? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And it's all about empowering people. Just, is there any question, I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about sales influence that I should have, that you think you'd like to share, or just you think that could help?
I'd like to end on this. So, like, all principles are microcosms of each other, right? What does that mean? That means you take a principle from one arena, put it in a different arena, it still has to work. So like, sales is a mathematical equation. Sales is a scientific equation. Sales is an emotional equation, and they're all pointing in the same direction. And so, like, when I discovered, like, the laws of energy, everything is energy, like the laws of thermodynamics, first law of energy. Everything is energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form. So when you think about that, like, everything, if you look around, like I tell people, look around your house right now when I'm doing the challenge, like, look around your house, you see all your stuff. Think about your car that's out in the driveway or in the garage. Think about your wardrobe. Think about your last vacation. All of that stuff is the direct result of the energy that you are. And if you don't like what you have, just understand you have turned your energy into all of those outcomes. If you don't like what you have, increase your energy. See, because high income is the result of high energy, right? So that's the first law. Second law is the law of entropy. Anything left to itself tends to move more and more towards disorder, which means nobody can improve themselves for themselves, by themselves. We all have to have an outside force. That's why I always tell my clients, a coach that doesn't have a coach doesn't deserve to be your coach. You will never have a conversation with me on a day when I don't have a business coach. I always have a business coach in my life. I got a business coach. I have a spiritual coach. Like, any area of my life in which I desire to improve, I'm going to allow myself to be affected by an outside force. Okay. Third law is the law of polarity. This is so good. It's so weird that this is like, we're having this interview right now, and I was at the golf course today, and this kid, Luke, who works in the cart barn, he comes to me and says, I have a question for you, Mr. Golden. He says, like, you had polio when you were an infant, right? Yeah. He said, has there ever been a time when you thought, why does this happen to me? Like, as an adult? I'm like, no, I don't think why it's happened to me. I know why it happened to me, because everything is a gift. And I asked him this question. I said, have you ever seen a one-sided piece of paper? Have you ever seen a one-sided pancake? Have you ever seen a one-sided waffle? Have you ever seen a one-sided piece of bread? Have you ever seen a one-sided coin? No. Why not? Here's why. You've never seen one of those things, and you never will, because they cannot exist. The third law is the law of polarity. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every positive, there's a negative. For every negative, there's a positive. People say, I'm having a bad day. No, you're having a day in which you are focused on the bad things in that day. I'm having a great day. No, you're having a day in which you're focused on the great things in that day. This terrible thing happened to me. No, this thing happened to you, and you're focused on the terrible things about that thing that happened to you, and you're ignoring the great things about that thing that happened to you. It's impossible for something terrible to happen to you without exactly at the same time something awesome happening to you. Like, and so, like, the fact that I had polio, it's a disadvantage in some areas of life. I can't run, right? That's not a terror. I mean, it's a disadvantage, but it can't be a disadvantage without being an advantage also. And I realized as an adult, even though I hated the fact that I had polio as a child, I hated the fact that everybody could run but me. In my mind, that's how I visualized it, right? Everybody can run but me. Guess what? God ordained that for the assignment that I have, that my body moves slower so my mind can move faster. Right? And if I receive that, here's what I understand, that what you resist persists, but what you embrace becomes grace, and grace is a gift. So start looking for the thing to be thankful for and grateful for in everything that happens to you, everything that happens for you, because the reality is everything that happens to you does happen for you. Okay? So that law. But then there's the law of inertia. What's the law of inertia? An object at rest will remain at rest until and unless it's acted upon by an outside force. And the law that comes after that is the law of momentum. An object in motion will continue in motion until and unless it's acted upon by an outside force. What does that have to do with sales? Only this. When you start a sales conversation with somebody, they are, when it comes to taking advantage of your offer, they are in the place of inertia. An object at rest will remain at rest until and unless it's acted upon by an outside force. Now, here's what's going to happen. You are going to bring your energy into that space, and either your high level of energy is going to elevate their energy to your frequency, or their low energy is going to decrease your energy to their frequency. One of those two things is going to happen. And so they are either going to be the inertia that overcomes your momentum, or your presentation is going to be the momentum that overcomes their inertia. And what most salespeople don't realize, just like in science, in sales, everything you say and everything you do, you are either creating inertia in the buyer or you're creating momentum in the buyer. Make sure you're not doing anything to create inertia and everything to create momentum.
So powerful. I wrote down something you said when I, and you don't even notice, when the first time I saw you speak, inside the course, you were talking about how, for you, just, your faith, and you kind of, you have this, God is kind of this ruler over your life, and it's like you have this divine assignment where that
Yes.
you rule over. And I wrote that down, and it's like, I'm here to rule over my assignment for the people that I come into contact with.
And then to use that assignment to serve people you come into contact with. That's the whole purpose of life. I yield my life to God as the sovereign king of my life. I rule over my assignment as the sovereign king of my assignment. I use the assignment that I rule over to serve every human being I come in contact with. Now, I want you to think about this. If every human being on earth lived like that, the world would change tomorrow.
If
every human being on earth lived by that ideology, that philosophy, it would change the entire world tomorrow.
Yeah.
Instead of Satan wants to rule over everybody's life, and then when you yield to him, he wants you to attempt to rule over other people and then use the other people you rule over to serve stuff to yourself. It's the exact opposite of the kingdom of God.
And it's so powerful. So many times in my life, I've felt lost, and I think a lot of people are lost, and they, a lot of people get into sales because they're lost. They didn't become a doctor, lawyer, or quote unquote professional. They wanted to make some money. And they see this as a default profession, as opposed to something that's an assignment, which is a holy or worthy or whatever you want to call it. It's a cool thing, the capacity to be able to influence the quality of a person's life through a conversation. And so
absolutely.
I think, it's so powerful to see what you've done. And you're my coach, so I have a coach, and we're all getting to learn here right now. So this has been amazing. Where can our listeners find out more about you, hop on the challenge, get your book? Where can people find out about what you're up to in the world?
They can go to my name, MyronGolden.com. There are links to everything in my website. Or they can go to my Instagram, which is at Myron Golden. There's no dots. There are no dashes. There are no underscores. There are a lot of fake Myron Goldens on Instagram. People, when you have influence, people will try to use that influence. And what they'll do is they'll go and they'll clone your page, right? And I'm sure you've had this happen. They'll clone your page, and then they'll start inboxing your followers. So if it's not just at Myron Golden, MyronGolden, if it has any other letters, dots, dashes, it's not me. I only have one Instagram account. And on that Instagram account, if you follow me, you'll find some really good stuff. It'll be helpful.
Yeah. And because Myron is a mentor of mine, for everybody listening, really detailed show notes. There was some fire here. I'm going to be going back over this myself. We've had first time you allowed me to interview in my Facebook group. I listened to that thing like 8 times. And so I ended up joining your program, and really detailed show notes. And we'll also put a link to the challenge that I saw about a year ago. That was really profound. And, a lot of people listening to this will be doing online presentations, and you've taken your in-person 2-day event and kind of just turned it horizontal.
Horizontal into a 5-day, 2 hours a day. And it's impacted a lot of people.
It has. It's me included. I've done thousands of in-person events, but I don't think this online virtual world thing is going away anytime soon, regardless of Corona. It's like, that's the world we live in. And if you want to see somebody captivate and light up that screen and build your belief in your capacity to still sell and move people from your home, there's no better place. So we'll make sure we put those links in the notes. Mr. Myron Golden, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking this time.
Always a pleasure, Eli. I think I'm going to go get some dinner with my wife.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
All right, man. Have a great rest of your evening.